Christina Howell had spent 9 years believing she knew exactly what her life looked like. She had a beautiful home, a career that demanded precision and excellence, and a husband who kissed her goodbye every morning before heading to work. But standing in front of room 312 at the Lakewood Hotel on that cold October afternoon, watching Derek wrap a towel around his waist, while a woman 10 years younger than her clutched the bedsheets behind him, Christina realized she had been living inside a carefully constructed lie. She did not scream. She did not cry. She simply looked at Derek with the same calm expression she used when guiding aircraft through dangerous weather patterns, turned around, and walked back toward the elevator. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with a rhythm that betrayed nothing of the storm building inside her chest. Christina had always been the kind of woman others admired from a distance. At 38, she carried herself with an elegance that came not from expensive clothes or perfect makeup, but from an unshakable inner confidence forged through years of working in one of the most high-pressure jobs in the world. As an air traffic controller at one of the busiest airports in the country, she held hundreds of lives in her hands every single day. One miscalculation, one moment of distraction, and planes carrying families, children, people with dreams and futures could collide in mid-air. The job had taught her to compartmentalize emotions, to think clearly when chaos erupted around her, to make decisions in fractions of a second that others would need hours to process. But nothing in her training had prepared her for the sight of her husband with another woman. The drive home felt like moving through water. Christina gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her breathing steady despite the earthquake happening somewhere deep in her soul. She had discovered Derek's location through the GPS tracking app they had installed on each other's phones years ago, a safety measure he had suggested after she started working late-night shifts. The irony was not lost on her. The very tool meant to keep them connected had revealed the depth of his betrayal. She pulled into the driveway of the home they had shared for 7 years. A charming 2-story house with a wraparound porch and a garden she had planted herself. The chrysanthemums were blooming, golden and rust-colored, beautiful against the fading autumn light. Christina sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the front door, remembering the day they had first walked through it together. Derek had lifted her over the threshold, laughing, promising her a lifetime of happiness within these walls. Lies. All of it. Lies. She did not go inside immediately. Instead, she pulled out her phone and began methodically taking screenshots of the GPS history. The Lakewood Hotel appeared again and again over the past 2 months, always on Wednesdays and Fridays, always during the hours when Derek claimed to be meeting with vendors or scouting event locations. Christina saved everything to a secure folder in the cloud, then emailed copies to her personal account. Evidence. She needed evidence. Not because she doubted what she had seen, but because she knew Derek well enough to anticipate what would come next. The denial, the manipulation, the desperate attempt to make her question her own reality. She had watched him do it before, though never to her. She had seen how he could charm his way out of difficult situations at work, how he could spin stories that made clients forgive delays and mishaps that should have cost him contracts. Derek was a master of words, of deflection, of making people believe whatever version of truth served him best. But Christina was not one of his clients, and she was not going to give him the chance to rewrite this story. Inside the house, everything looked exactly as she had left it that morning. The coffee cup she had rinsed and placed in the dish rack, the throw blanket folded neatly over the arm of the couch, the framed photograph on the mantel from their wedding day, both of them smiling with the kind of joy that seemed impossible to fake. Christina walked past it all without stopping, climbed the stairs to the bedroom, and opened the closet where she kept a fireproof lockbox with their important documents. She pulled out everything: marriage certificate, deed to the house, bank statements, investment portfolios, their entire financial life spread across the bed, like pieces of a puzzle she was only now beginning to understand. She photographed each document, organized the files, and began making a list of questions for the divorce attorney she would contact first thing Monday morning. The word divorce sat heavy in her mind, foreign and sharp-edged. 9 years. 9 years of building a life together, of planning a future, of believing that the man sleeping beside her every night was her partner in everything. They had talked about having children. Just last month, Derek had mentioned that maybe next year would be the right time to start trying. Christina had felt her heart swell with hope at those words, imagining a little girl with her eyes and his smile running through the garden, filling the house with laughter. Now that dream lay shattered alongside everything else. By the time Derek's car pulled into the driveway 3 hours later, Christina was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water in front of her and a manila folder containing every piece of evidence she had gathered. She heard his key in the lock, heard his footsteps in the hallway, heard him call out her name with the casual warmth of a man who believed his secrets were still safe. Christina. "Babe, are you home?" "In here," she replied, her voice perfectly even. Derek appeared in the kitchen doorway, still wearing the blue button-down shirt she had ironed for him that morning. He smiled, but there was something cautious behind his eyes, a flicker of uncertainty that told her he was already calculating, already preparing his defense. "Hey, you. Did not expect you home so early." He walked toward her, leaning in for a kiss. Christina turned her head slightly, letting his lips brush her cheek instead of her mouth. "Sit down, Derek. We need to talk." His smile faltered. "What is wrong? Did something happen at work?" She studied him for a moment. This man she had loved for more than a decade. This man who had looked into her eyes that very morning and told her he would be stuck in meetings until late evening. The man who had then driven to a hotel to spend the afternoon with a woman named Riley Landry, a 28-year-old event decorator whose company frequently worked with Derek's firm. Christina had done her research during those 3 hours of waiting. She knew exactly who the woman in that hotel room was. "I went to the Lakewood Hotel today," Christina said, watching his face carefully. "Room 312. The color drained from Derek's cheeks so fast it was almost fascinating to witness. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Christina could practically see the wheels turning in his mind, the frantic search for an explanation, an alibi, anything that might salvage the situation. "What? Why would you go there?" His voice cracked slightly. "I do not understand what you are talking about." "Do not," Christina said softly. "Do not insult me by lying to my face again. I was there. I saw you. I saw her." Derek's expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, fear, and then something that looked almost like relief, as if part of him had been waiting for this moment, tired of carrying the weight of deception. But the relief lasted only a second before it was replaced by desperation. "Christina, listen to me. Whatever you think you saw, it is not what it looks like. You have to let me explain." She almost laughed. It was such a predictable response, so perfectly aligned with everything she had anticipated. Not what it looks like. As if there were some innocent explanation for finding your husband half naked in a hotel room with another woman. "So explain," she said, leaning back in her chair. "I am listening." Derek ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit she had once found endearing. "It is complicated, okay? You have been working so much lately, and I have been under a lot of pressure with the business. And Riley, she is just someone who understands what I am going through. We were just talking, and things got out of hand, but it did not mean anything. It was a mistake, a stupid, meaningless mistake." Christina nodded slowly, as if considering his words. "A mistake. That is what you are calling it?" "Yes." He reached across the table, trying to take her hand. She pulled away. "Babe, please. It was one time. I swear to you, it will never happen again. I love you. Only you." She let the silence stretch between them, watching him squirm. Then, with deliberate calm, She opened the manila folder and slid the first printout across the table. It was a screenshot of the GPS history showing his location at the Lakewood Hotel 2 weeks ago. Wednesday, October 2nd, she said, 3:27 in the afternoon until 6:45. Derek stared at the paper, his jaw tightening. Christina slid another printout across. Friday, October 4th, 2:15 until 5:30. Another paper. Another date. Another afternoon spent in room 312 while Christina was at work, believing her husband was building their future. She placed 8 more printouts on the table, forming a neat row of evidence that stretched back 2 months. Derek sat frozen, his face ashen, all his carefully prepared excuses crumbling into dust. "Tell me again how it was one time," Christina said, her voice still calm, still controlled. "Tell me again how it meant nothing." Derek said nothing. For the first time since she had known him, he had no words, no charming explanation, no way to spin the truth into something more palatable. He simply sat there, staring at the evidence of his betrayal laid out before him like a verdict already delivered. Christina gathered the papers back into the folder and stood up. "I am sleeping in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow, I suggest you start looking for somewhere else to live." She walked out of the kitchen without looking back, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her temples, but her hands were steady. Her steps were sure, and somewhere beneath the pain threatening to consume her, a small flame of determination had begun to burn. She would survive this. She would rebuild, and Derek Howell would learn exactly what it meant to underestimate a woman who spent her days preventing disasters. The night stretched endlessly, each hour dragging like a weight Christina could not shake. She lay in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every moment of her marriage through a new lens. Every late night, Derek claimed to be working. Every business trip that seemed to last just a little too long. Every time he reached for his phone with that particular smile, the one she had assumed was about work, but now understood was something else entirely. How long had he been lying to her? Was Riley the first, or simply the latest in a string of betrayals Christina had been too trusting to notice? Sleep came in fragments, brief moments of exhaustion that gave way to dreams where she stood in the control tower watching planes collide in slow motion, unable to do anything but witness the destruction. She woke before dawn, her body aching as if she had run a marathon, and made her way downstairs to start the coffee maker. The kitchen still held traces of last night's confrontation. The manila folder sat on the counter where she had left it, its contents a permanent record of Derek's deception. Christina poured herself a cup of coffee and sat at the table, watching the first gray light of morning filter through the windows. The house felt different now, contaminated somehow, as if Derek's betrayal had seeped into the walls and furniture, tainting everything they had built together. She heard movement upstairs around 7, the creak of floorboards, the sound of the shower running in the master bathroom. Derek emerged 30 minutes later, freshly shaved, dressed in khakis and a polo shirt, as if this were any ordinary Saturday morning. He paused in the kitchen doorway, his expression a careful mask of contrition. "Christina, can we please talk about this?" She did not look up from her coffee. "I think you said everything that needed to be said last night. That is not fair." He stepped closer, his voice taking on a pleading quality she had never heard before. "I made a terrible mistake. I know that, but we have been together for 9 years. Does not that count for something? Does not our marriage deserve a chance?" Now she looked at him, really looked, and saw a stranger wearing her husband's face. "Our marriage." She repeated the words slowly, testing their weight. "You talk about our marriage as if it is something you valued. But for the past 2 months at least, you have been destroying it. Every Wednesday, every Friday. While I was at work, keeping planes from falling out of the sky, you were in a hotel room with a woman 10 years younger than me." "It was not like that," Derek insisted, sliding into the chair across from her. "Riley and we connected on a professional level first. She understood the pressure I was under. You are always so busy, Christina. Your job consumes you. Sometimes I felt like I was married to the airport, not to you." Christina set down her coffee cup with exaggerated care, controlling the tremor of anger that ran through her hands. "So this is my fault. Because I worked too much. You had no choice but to sleep with your event decorator. I am not saying it is your fault. I am saying there were problems in our marriage that we both ignored." "Problems," Christina repeated. "Tell me, Derek, in the past 6 months, how many times did I ask you to have dinner with me? Real dinner. Not takeout in front of the television, but actually sitting down together at a restaurant like we used to?" He hesitated, caught off guard by the question. 12 times, she continued. "I asked you 12 times. You canceled 11. Said you had client meetings, vendor negotiations, events running late. I checked the calendar, Derek. I checked your GPS history. You know where you were on those 11 nights?" His face went pale, the realization dawning slowly. 7 of them. You were at the Lakewood Hotel. The other 4, you were at Riley's apartment. She let that sink in for a moment. "So please, tell me more about how I was too busy for our marriage. Tell me more about how I neglected you while you were lying to my face and spending our money on another woman." Derek opened his mouth, but no words came out. The defense he had constructed, the narrative of a neglected husband driven into another woman's arms, crumbled under the weight of Christina's precision. She had not just discovered his affair. She had dissected it, mapped it, documented it, with the same meticulous attention she brought to everything in her life. "I want you out of this house by the end of the weekend," she said, standing up. "I have already contacted a divorce attorney. We will handle the asset division through our lawyers." "Christina, wait!" Derek stood too, reaching for her arm. "Please, I know I destroyed your trust, but I love you. I have always loved you." Riley meant nothing. She was just an escape from the pressure, from feeling like I was not enough for you. Christina pulled her arm away, her expression cold. "If I was not enough for you, you should have told me. You should have fought for our marriage instead of running to someone else. But you made your choice, Derek. You made it over and over again, every single time you walked into that hotel room. Now you have to live with the consequences." She walked out of the kitchen and up the stairs, leaving him standing alone with the wreckage of his excuses scattered around him. The weekend passed in a blur of logistics and quiet devastation. Derek packed his belongings into boxes and suitcases, loading them into his car with the defeated posture of a man who had finally realized what he had lost. Christina stayed in the guest room, emerging only to ensure he did not take anything that belonged to her or that they would need to divide legally. She watched him carry out the golf clubs his father had given him, the collection of vinyl records he had accumulated over the years, the leather jacket she had bought him for his 35th birthday. 9 years of shared life, reduced to cardboard boxes. On Sunday evening, Derek stood in the doorway one last time, his car packed, his keys to the house placed on the entry table. "Christina," he said softly, "I am so sorry. I know those words are not enough, but I need you to know that I never meant to hurt you." She stood in the hallway, arms crossed, her face unreadable. "Goodbye, Derek." He lingered for a moment, as if hoping she might change her mind, might offer some opening for reconciliation. When none came, he nodded slowly and walked out the door. Christina watched his car pull out of the driveway and disappear down the street, and only then did she allow herself to sink onto the bottom step of the staircase, her hands trembling, her composure finally cracking. But she did not cry. Not yet. There was still work to be done. Monday morning, Christina sat in the office of Margaret Chen, one of the most respected divorce attorneys in the city. The office was elegant, but not ostentatious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the downtown skyline and tasteful artwork on the walls. Margaret herself was a woman in her early 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with a reputation for protecting her clients with fierce determination. Christina laid out everything she had gathered. The GPS records, the credit card statements showing hotel charges and expensive dinners, the timeline she had constructed documenting Derek's movements over the past 2 months. Margaret reviewed each document carefully, her expression revealing nothing. "You have been thorough," she said finally, looking up at Christina with something like approval. "This will make the process significantly easier. Colorado is a no-fault state, which means you do not need to prove adultery to obtain a divorce. However, evidence of marital misconduct can influence asset division, particularly if you can demonstrate that joint funds were used to facilitate the affair." "He put everything on our shared credit card," Christina said. "The hotel rooms, the dinners, even gifts for her. I found charges for jewelry that I never received." Margaret made a note. "That works in our favor. Given the evidence and the relatively straightforward nature of your assets, I would recommend pushing for a settlement rather than prolonged litigation. It will be faster and less expensive for both parties. However, if he contests anything, we have more than enough ammunition to fight." Christina nodded, her throat tight. "What about the house? Given that you both contributed to the mortgage, it would typically be split equally. However, I can argue for you to retain the house in exchange for a larger share of the liquid assets going to him, or we can force a sale and divide the proceeds. What would you prefer?" "I want to keep the house." Christina surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. "I planted that garden. I chose every piece of furniture. He does not get to take that from me, too." Margaret smiled, a brief flash of warmth in her professional demeanor. "Then we will make sure you keep it." The consultation lasted 2 hours, covering every aspect of the divorce process, from filing the petition to negotiating the settlement to the final decree. By the time Christina left the office, she had a clear roadmap for the months ahead, and a sense of control she had not felt since walking into that hotel room. But there was one more thing she needed to do. That evening, Christina sat at her computer and composed a message. She had found Nathan Landry's contact information with relative ease. He was a financial consultant with a professional profile on multiple platforms, his photograph showing a pleasant-faced man in his mid-30s with kind eyes and an easy smile. He had no idea that his wife had been spending Wednesday and Friday afternoons in a hotel room with another woman's husband. Christina did not believe in anonymous accusations. If she was going to shatter this man's world the same way hers had been shattered, she would do it with her name attached, with evidence to support every claim, with the respect of one betrayed spouse reaching out to another. She wrote the message carefully, keeping it factual and compassionate. She introduced herself, explained her connection to Riley through Derek, and described what she had discovered. She attached screenshots of the GPS records, the credit card statements showing charges at the Lakewood Hotel, and a single photograph she had taken from the hallway of the hotel that day, showing Derek and Riley through the partially open door before either of them had noticed her presence. She read the message 3 times, checking for anything that could be misconstrued or used against her legally. Then, with a steadiness that surprised her, she clicked send. Whatever happened next was out of her hands, but Nathan Landry deserved to know the truth, the same way she had deserved to know it. What he chose to do with that information was his own decision. Christina closed her laptop and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the garden she had tended for 7 years. The chrysanthemums were still blooming, stubborn and beautiful against the cooling autumn air. She would get through this. She would rebuild her life, tend her garden, return to work, find a way to fill the silence that now echoed through every room of her house. But tonight, she simply stood and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, and allowed herself to feel the full weight of everything she had lost. Nathan Landry read Christina's message on Tuesday morning, sitting in his car in the parking garage of his office building. He read it once, then again, then a third time, his hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped his phone. By Tuesday afternoon, he had confronted Riley. By Tuesday evening, he had asked her to leave their apartment. By Wednesday morning, he had contacted a divorce attorney of his own. Christina learned all of this through a reply Nathan sent her late Wednesday night. It was brief but genuine, thanking her for having the courage to tell him the truth directly, rather than hiding behind anonymity. He wrote that he had suspected something was wrong for months, but had convinced himself he was being paranoid. Her message, painful as it was, had given him the clarity he needed to stop living in denial. She read his words and felt a strange kinship with this man she had never met. Two strangers united by the betrayals of the people they had trusted most. The aftermath of Christina's revelation spread through Derek's professional world like wildfire. Riley, desperate to save her own marriage, had apparently told Nathan everything, including details about how the affair had started, how Derek had pursued her, how they had used work events as cover for their meetings. Nathan, in his anger and heartbreak, had shared some of this information with colleagues in the event planning industry. Within a week, whispers had begun circulating about Derek Howell, the charming coordinator who had been sleeping with one of his vendors while his wife worked to keep airplanes from colliding. Derek called Christina on Thursday evening, his voice tight, with barely contained fury. "You ruined me," he said without preamble. "Do you understand that? You went to her husband, and now everyone knows. I have had 3 clients cancel contracts this week. My reputation is destroyed." Christina held the phone to her ear, standing in the kitchen where she had confronted him just days ago. "I did not ruin you, Derek. You ruined yourself. I simply made sure the other person you were hurting knew the truth. You had no right to do that. This was between us." "No." Christina's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. "It stopped being between us the moment you involved another woman. Riley made vows to Nathan the same way you made vows to me. He deserved to know what his wife was doing, the same way I deserved to know what my husband was doing." Derek was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, some of the anger had drained from his voice, replaced by something that sounded almost like desperation. "Christina, I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed everything. But please, can we at least try to be civil about this? The divorce, the settlement, everything. I am not going to fight you. I just want this to be over. Then sign the papers your lawyer received and stop wasting both our time." She hung up without waiting for a response. The divorce proceedings moved faster than Christina had expected. Derek, true to his word, did not contest anything significant. Margaret Chen negotiated a settlement that left Christina with the house, 70% of their investment portfolio, and her full retirement accounts. Derek kept his car, his personal savings, and the crushing weight of his own choices. The final hearing was scheduled for January, barely 3 months after Christina had walked into room 312 at the Lakewood Hotel. But the speed of the legal process did not match the pace of emotional healing. Christina returned to work the week after Derek moved out, sliding back into the rhythm of the control tower with the discipline that had defined her career. Her colleagues noticed something was different, a quietness in her demeanor, a shadow behind her eyes, but they respected her privacy and did not ask questions. Air traffic control was a profession that understood the necessity of compartmentalization, of setting aside personal struggles to focus on the lives depending on your precision. She worked her shifts with flawless attention, guiding planes through fog and rain and the chaos of holiday travel season. She spoke to pilots with calm authority, made split-second decisions that prevented potential disasters, earned commendations from her supervisors for her unshakable performance during a particularly difficult week in November when a snowstorm had thrown the entire region into disarray. But when she came home each night to the empty house, the walls seemed to close in around her. Christina had always considered herself a strong woman, someone who could handle whatever life threw at her with grace and determination. She had built a career in a male-dominated field, had navigated the pressures of her job without breaking, had maintained her composure even when standing in the doorway of her husband's hotel room watching her marriage crumble. But strength, she was learning, did not mean immunity to pain. It simply meant carrying the pain while continuing to move forward. The hardest moments came unexpectedly. A song on the radio that Derek used to sing along with, the smell of his cologne lingering faintly in the closet she had not yet fully cleaned out. The habit of reaching for her phone to text him something funny that happened at work, only to remember that he was no longer the person she shared such moments with. Each small trigger sent fresh waves of grief crashing through her, reminders of everything she had lost, everything she had believed in that had turned out to be illusion. And beneath the grief, there was something else, a quieter pain, one she had not spoken aloud to anyone, the dream of motherhood that had been postponed year after year, always waiting for the right time, always trusting that she and Derek would eventually take that next step together. Now she was 38 years old, newly divorced, and the future she had imagined, a child with her eyes and his smile, had dissolved into nothing. It was this thought that finally broke her. On a Sunday afternoon in late November, rain streaking the windows and gray light filling the house, Christina woke from a restless sleep and made her way to the kitchen. The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the air with the familiar aroma that had once meant comfort and routine. She poured herself a cup, wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, and sat down at the table where she had confronted Derek with the evidence of his betrayal. The chair across from her was empty. The house was silent, except for the rain. Christina stared at that empty chair for a long moment, thinking about all the mornings she and Derek had sat here together, sharing breakfast, making plans, talking about the family they would someday have. She thought about the nursery she had secretly been designing in her mind, the pale yellow walls and white furniture, the rocking chair by the window where she would hold her baby and sing lullabies. She thought about the way Derek had smiled when he mentioned trying for a child next year, the hope she had felt, the trust she had placed in him to help her build that future. And then, without warning, the tears came. They started slowly, sliding down her cheeks in silent streams, but soon her whole body was shaking with sobs she could not control. Christina bent forward over the table, her forehead nearly touching the surface, and let 9 years of love and trust and broken dreams pour out of her in waves of anguish that seemed to have no end. Why? The word escaped her lips in a broken whisper. Why did you do this to us? There was no answer. There would never be an answer that made sense. No explanation that could justify the destruction of everything they had built together. Derek had made his choices, and now Christina was left to pick up the pieces of a life she no longer recognized. She cried until her chest ached and her eyes burned, and there were no tears left to shed. The coffee grew cold in her cup, untouched. The rain continued to fall outside, washing the world in shades of gray. And Christina sat alone in her kitchen, hollowed out by grief, wondering how she would ever find her way back to feeling whole again. The minutes stretched into hours. Eventually, the storm inside her subsided, leaving behind a strange emptiness that was almost peaceful in its completeness. Christina lifted her head, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and looked around the kitchen as if seeing it for the first time. This was her house now, her life, her future, whatever shape it might take. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady, and walked to the window. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle, and through the clouds she could see the faintest hint of light trying to break through. It was not much, just a pale glow on the horizon, but it was there. Christina took a deep breath and made a decision. She would not let Derek's betrayal define the rest of her life. She would not let his choices determine her future. The dream of motherhood had not died with her marriage. It had simply changed shape, waiting for her to find a new path forward. She did not know yet what that path would look like, But standing in her kitchen on that rainy Sunday afternoon, watching the first glimmers of light pierce the clouds, Christina felt something stir in her chest that she had thought was gone forever. Hope. The divorce was finalized on a cold January morning, exactly 3 months after Christina had discovered the truth. She sat in the courtroom beside Margaret Chen, watching the judge review the settlement agreement and sign the final decree. Derek sat on the opposite side of the room with his own attorney, his face drawn and tired, looking like a man who had aged 10 years in 3 months. When the judge declared the marriage officially dissolved, Christina felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness, not triumph, just a quiet numbness that had settled over her in recent weeks, protecting her from the sharper edges of her emotions. She shook Margaret's hand, thanked her for her work, and walked out of the courthouse without looking back at the man who had been her husband for 9 years. Outside, the winter air was crisp and clean, carrying the faint scent of snow. Christina stood on the courthouse steps for a moment, breathing deeply, letting the cold fill her lungs. She was officially Christina Howell again, no longer bound to Derek by anything except the memories she was slowly learning to release. The months that followed were a study in reconstruction. Christina threw herself into work with renewed intensity, earning a promotion to senior controller that came with increased responsibilities and a significant raise. She repainted the bedroom she had once shared with Derek, choosing a soft sage green that felt calm and entirely her own. She rearranged the furniture, donated the pieces that held too many memories, and slowly transformed the house into a space that reflected who she was becoming, rather than who she had been. She also began seeing a therapist, a gentlewoman named Dr. Patricia Reeves, who helped her process the layers of grief and anger and self-doubt that the divorce had unearthed. In those sessions, Christina learned to separate Derek's choices from her own worth as a person and as a partner. She learned that his betrayal was not a reflection of her inadequacy, but of his own weakness, his inability to communicate honestly, his willingness to take the cowardly path instead of fighting for what they had built together. But the most important thing Christina learned in therapy was about herself, about the dreams she had set aside, the desires she had postponed, the future she had been waiting for someone else to give her permission to pursue. "I always thought I would be a mother," she told Dr. Reeves during a session in late February. "Derek and I talked about it constantly, always planning for someday. And now someday is here, and I am 38 years old, and I am alone." Dr. Reeves leaned forward slightly, her expression warm and attentive. "Do you still want to be a mother?" The question hit Christina with unexpected force. She had been so focused on grieving the loss of the future she had planned with Derek that she had not stopped to consider whether that future could still exist in a different form. "Yes," she whispered, the word carrying the weight of years of longing. "Yes, I still want that." Then perhaps it is time to explore what that could look like for you now. Not the version you planned with Derek. A new version. Your version. That conversation planted a seed in Christina's mind that grew slowly over the following weeks. She began researching her options, learning about adoption agencies and foster care programs, reading stories of single women who had built beautiful families on their own terms. The more she learned, the more the possibility took shape in her imagination, not as a consolation prize for the life she had lost, but as a genuine choice she could make for herself. In April, Christina submitted her application to become an adoptive parent through a local agency. The process was thorough and sometimes exhausting, involving home studies, background checks, interviews, and mountains of paperwork. But Christina approached it with the same methodical determination she brought to everything else in her life. She completed parenting classes, prepared a room in her house that could become a child's bedroom, and waited with a patience she had not known she possessed. Meanwhile, news of Derek filtered through occasionally, usually through mutual acquaintances who did not realize how little Christina wanted to hear about him. He had moved to a small apartment on the other side of the city. His event coordination business was struggling, having lost several major clients in the aftermath of the scandal. Riley had apparently ended things with him shortly after her own divorce was finalized, leaving Derek alone to face the consequences of choices he had made while believing he would never be caught. Christina felt no satisfaction in his suffering. She felt nothing at all, which she supposed was its own kind of progress. In June, she received a call from her adoption caseworker. "Christina, I think we may have found a match for you." Her caseworker's voice was warm with contained excitement. "There is a little girl, 7 years old, named Lily. She has been in foster care for 2 years. Her situation is stable, and she is ready for a permanent home. Would you be willing to meet her?" Christina's heart stopped, then started again with a rhythm that felt entirely new. "Yes," she managed to say. "Yes, I would love to meet her." The first meeting took place at the foster care facility on a sunny Saturday afternoon in late June. Christina arrived early, her palms sweating despite the air conditioning, her mind racing with questions and fears and hopes she could barely contain. The caseworker led her to a small room with comfortable furniture and cheerful artwork on the walls, designed to feel welcoming rather than institutional. And there she was, Lily, a small girl with curly brown hair pulled back in 2 ponytails, wearing a yellow sundress with daisies on it, and sneakers that lit up when she walked. She had enormous brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, assessing and curious, and just a little bit guarded. Christina knelt down to be at eye level with her. "Hi, Lily. My name is Christina. It is really nice to meet you." Lily studied her for a long moment, her head tilted slightly to one side. "You have pretty hair," she said finally. "It is all wavy like mine." "Thank you." Christina smiled, feeling some of the tension in her chest begin to ease. "I like your dress. Those daisies are beautiful. They are my favorite flower." Lily glanced down at her dress, then back up at Christina. "Miss Karen said, you might want to be my mom. Is that true?" The directness of the question caught Christina off guard, but she recovered quickly. She had learned from her caseworker that Lily was exceptionally bright for her age, precocious in ways that sometimes made adults uncomfortable. Christina found it refreshing. "I would like to get to know you first," she said honestly, "and I would like you to get to know me. Being a family is a big decision, and I think we should make it together. What do you think?" Lily considered this with the seriousness of a judge weighing evidence. "That sounds fair," she agreed. "Can we color?" I brought my crayons. They spent the next hour coloring together, talking about Lily's favorite things, which included butterflies, strawberry ice cream, and a cartoon about a magical princess who solved mysteries. Christina learned that Lily loved books, but struggled with math, that she wanted to learn to swim, but was a little scared of deep water, that she had a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Whiskers, who went everywhere with her. By the end of the visit, something had shifted in the room. The guardedness in Lily's eyes had softened, replaced by a tentative warmth that made Christina's heart ache with hope. "Can you come back?" Lily asked, as Christina prepared to leave. "I want to show you my other drawings. I have a whole folder." "I would love that," Christina said. "How about next Saturday?" Lily nodded eagerly, then surprised Christina by stepping forward and wrapping her small arms around her waist in a brief, fierce hug. "Okay, it is a deal." Christina drove home that afternoon with tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in months, they were not tears of grief. The visits continued through July and August, each one building on the last. Christina learned the rhythms of Lily's personality, her quirks and fears, and the particular way she laughed when something really delighted her. She learned that Lily had nightmares sometimes about being left alone, and that she needed extra reassurance on days when the weather was gray. She learned that Lily was fiercely independent, but also desperately wanted someone to belong to, a contradiction that Christina understood more deeply than she could express. On their 6th visit, sitting together on a bench in the facility's garden while butterflies danced among the flowers, Lily turned to Christina with a serious expression. "Can I ask you something?" Of course. You can ask me anything. Lily was quiet for a moment, watching a yellow butterfly settle on a nearby bloom. Do you have a husband? Christina felt a small twist in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. No, I do not. Not anymore. Lily nodded slowly, processing this information. Then her face brightened, with a wisdom that seemed far beyond her 7 years. That is okay. Boys are annoying anyway. She looked up at Christina with a mischievous smile. This way, we can play dolls and have tea parties without anyone bothering us. Christina laughed, a real laugh that came from somewhere deep inside her, a place she had thought might never produce joy again. You know what, Lily? I think you might be absolutely right. The adoption was finalized on a crisp September morning, exactly 1 year after Christina had stood in the doorway of room 312 at the Lakewood Hotel and watched her old life crumble to pieces. She sat in the courtroom with Lily beside her, the little girl wearing a new purple dress she had picked out herself and clutching Mr. Whiskers tightly against her chest. The same courthouse where Christina's marriage had officially ended now bore witness to the beginning of something infinitely more precious. When the judge signed the final paperwork and declared that Lily was officially Christina's daughter, the little girl turned to her with eyes shining like stars. Does this mean you are my mom now? For real and forever? Christina knelt down, tears streaming freely down her face, and pulled Lily into her arms. For real and forever, she whispered. You are my daughter, and nothing in this world will ever change that. Lily hugged her back with all the strength her small body possessed. I love you, Mom. It was the first time she had called Christina that word. Mom. Such a simple sound. Just one syllable, but it carried the weight of every dream Christina had ever held close to her heart. Every hope she had thought was lost. Every prayer she had whispered into the darkness of sleepless nights. I love you too, Lily. More than you will ever know. They walked out of the courthouse hand in hand, stepping into the autumn sunshine that bathed the world in gold. Christina looked down at her daughter, at this extraordinary little girl, who had chosen her just as surely as she had chosen Lily, and felt something settle into place, deep within her soul. A completeness she had never experienced before, not even in the best moments of her marriage, not even when she had believed her life was exactly what it was supposed to be. This was what she had been waiting for. Not Derek, not the future they had planned together, but this child, this love, this family of two that felt more whole than anything she had ever known. The months that followed were filled with the beautiful chaos of new motherhood. Christina adjusted her work schedule to accommodate school pickups and homework help and bedtime stories. She learned to braid Lily's curly hair in the particular way she liked, with ribbons woven through that matched whatever outfit she had chosen. She attended parent-teacher conferences and dance recitals and birthday parties where she stood among other mothers, and finally felt like she belonged. Lily flourished in ways that amazed everyone who knew her story. The nightmares that had once plagued her became less frequent, then rare, then almost non-existent. She made friends at her new school, joined a swimming class where she conquered her fear of deep water, and filled their house with drawings and laughter and the particular brand of chaos that only a 7-year-old could create. Christina discovered that motherhood was harder than she had imagined, and also infinitely more rewarding. There were difficult days, moments when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, times when she questioned whether she was doing enough, being enough, giving Lily everything she deserved. But there were also moments of such profound joy that they took her breath away. Lily's face on Christmas morning when she saw the bicycle she had wished for, the sound of her laughter echoing through the house during pillow fights, the quiet moments before bed when Lily would curl against Christina's side and ask for just one more chapter. Please, just one more. In those moments, Christina understood that everything she had suffered, every tear she had shed, Every night she had spent alone in the darkness, wondering if she would ever feel whole again, had led her here, to this child, to this life, to a happiness she had not known was possible. One evening in early December, as snow fell softly outside the windows, and Christmas lights twinkled on the tree they had decorated together, Lily looked up from the puzzle they were assembling on the living room floor. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Anything." Lily was quiet for a moment, fitting a piece into place with careful concentration. "Why did you decide to adopt me? I mean, you could have had a baby of your own. A real one." Christina set down the puzzle piece she was holding and gave Lily her full attention. "What do you mean, a real one?" "You know." Lily shrugged, not meeting her eyes. "A baby that came from your tummy. One that was actually yours." Christina's heart clenched. She reached out and gently lifted Lily's chin until their eyes met. "Lily, look at me. You are actually mine. You are my real daughter in every way that matters. We may not share the same blood, but we share the same heart. And I did not adopt you because I could not have a baby. I adopted you because you were the daughter I was always meant to have. The universe just had to help us find each other." Lily's lower lip trembled. "But what if you change your mind? What if you decide you do not want me anymore?" Christina pulled Lily onto her lap and held her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the rapid flutter of her small heart against her own chest. "Listen to me very carefully," she said softly. "I am never, ever going to change my mind. You are stuck with me forever, Lily Howell, through good days and bad days, through scraped knees and bad dreams, through everything. I chose you, and I will keep choosing you every single day for the rest of my life. Do you understand?" Lily nodded against her shoulder, her arms tightening around Christina's neck. "I choose you too, Mom. Every day, forever." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other while the snow fell and the Christmas lights glowed, and the world outside grew quiet and still. And in that moment, Christina felt every last shard of her broken past dissolve into something new, something beautiful, something that had been waiting for her all along. Spring arrived with its usual fanfare of blooming flowers and warming breezes, and with it came a Saturday morning that Christina would remember for the rest of her life. She woke to the sound of Lily's footsteps padding down the hallway, followed by the creak of her bedroom door opening. "Mom, wake up." Lily climbed onto the bed with the boundless energy of a child who had never understood the appeal of sleeping in. "I made you something." Christina opened her eyes, smiling despite her exhaustion. The bedside clock read 6:47 in the morning, far earlier than she would have chosen to wake on her day off. But the excitement on Lily's face made it impossible to be anything but grateful. "What did you make me, sweetheart?" Lily thrust a piece of paper toward her, slightly crumpled from being clutched in eager hands. "It is a picture of our family," she announced proudly. "See? That is you, and that is me, and that is Mr. Whiskers, because he is family too." Christina took the drawing and studied it carefully. Two figures stood side by side in front of a house with a red door, one tall with wavy brown hair, one small with curly ponytails. They were holding hands, and above them, Lily had drawn a large yellow sun surrounded by hearts. A gray blob that was presumably Mr. Whiskers sat at their feet, and across the top of the page, in Lily's careful handwriting, were the words, "My family." "It is beautiful," Christina said, her voice thick with emotion. "I love it." "I am going to make more," Lily informed her. "One for every room in the house. That way everyone who visits will know that we are a family." Christina pulled her daughter into a hug, the drawing pressed between them. "That sounds like a perfect plan." Later that morning, after pancakes shaped like butterflies and a long walk through the neighborhood to admire the spring flowers, Christina stood in her kitchen making a fresh pot of coffee. Lily was in the backyard, chasing butterflies with the same joyful abandon she brought to everything in life. Through the window, Christina could see her daughter's purple jacket flashing among the blooming chrysanthemums, could hear her laughter carried on the warm breeze. She thought about the woman she had been a year and a half ago, sitting at this same table, staring at an empty chair, crying into a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. That woman had believed her life was over, that the best parts of her story had already been written and destroyed by someone else's choices. That woman could never have imagined standing here now, watching her daughter play in the garden, feeling a happiness so complete it sometimes frightened her. The journey from that rainy Sunday to this sunny spring morning had not been easy. There had been dark days, moments of doubt, times when the weight of everything she had lost threatened to pull her under. But she had kept moving forward, one step at a time, trusting that somewhere ahead there was light waiting for her even when she could not see it. And there was. There is. There always would be. The back door burst open, and Lily tumbled inside, breathless and grinning, a dandelion clutched in her fist. "Mom, look what I found. If you blow on it and make a wish, it comes true. Miss Karen at the foster home told me so." Christina smiled and knelt down to examine the dandelion. "Is that so? What are you going to wish for?" Lily thought about this very seriously, her brow furrowed in concentration. Then she shook her head and held the dandelion out to Christina. "You should wish. I already got my wish." "You did? What was your wish?" Lily looked at her with those enormous brown eyes, so full of trust and love, and the particular wisdom that only children possess. "I wished for a mom who would love me forever. And then I found you." Christina took the dandelion with trembling hands, her vision blurring with tears. She closed her eyes, thought about everything she had been through, everything she had survived, everything she had gained. Then she blew gently, sending the seeds dancing into the air, carrying with them a wish she did not need to make, because everything she had ever wanted was already standing right in front of her, wearing a purple jacket and a smile that could light up the world. "I love you, Lily," she said, pulling her daughter close. "I love you too, Mom." Lily hugged her back, then pulled away with a mischievous grin. "Can we have ice cream for lunch, since it is a special day?" Christina laughed, wiping her eyes. "What makes today special?" Lily shrugged as if the answer were obvious. "Every day is special now, because we are a family." And standing there in her kitchen, surrounded by the life she had built from the ashes of the one that had burned down, Christina knew with absolute certainty that her daughter was right. Every day was special now, and it would be for the rest of their lives, for real and forever. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.